Hi to everyone who's here. I'm Corey, one of the associate coordinators for the Data Science Club, which you probably know since you're here at a data science talk. Thank you so much all for coming, especially you, Ellen. The Data Science Club is super excited to host you. So this is Alan Whitaker from BambooHR, and he is the head of AI at BambooHR, which is super cool and has worked on really amazing projects, including a TED Talk that I'm going to share in the chat. So if after you attend this talk, you're like super excited to learn more about what Alan does, then you can go ahead and watch that talk. So without further ado, please welcome Alan Whitaker.
Thank you, and thanks again. It's just great to be with you. And you know, I grew up in Salt Lake Valley, and you know, so University of Utah. Many friends, colleagues, neighbors. If any of you have had a course from Burton Earnshaw, Dr. Earnshaw, he is someone that I worked closely with in prior companies, and that I hired in one of my startups, along with several of his colleagues that are at Recursion Pharmaceuticals, who have some fantastic things going on up there as well. So a lot of great activity in this area around data science. And believe it or not, it's not that long ago that I was in your shoes, even though you'll see from when I share my screen here in my next picture that it's been some time. Oh, it says we need to enable screen sharing.
Sorry, I was just about to do that.
Okay, here we go. Let's see. Okay, great. Tell me when you can see a panda.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. And you'll see, this presentation has some of our BambooHR branding. Like I said, I've been super excited to be part of the Bamboo journey, just starting recently. But if you don't know, BambooHR started here in Linden, Utah, over 10 years ago, and has grown to be a fantastic company. Lots of awards out there in terms of places to work, and really an exciting SaaS company. We're mentioned as a Forbes Cloud 100 company among SaaS companies, and then lots of accolades out there. And that speaks to all the leadership and decisions, to the team, the founders, Ben and Ryan, Brad Rencher, who's our CEO, who came from Adobe. You may have heard of him over there. But anyway, it's a tremendous company that has a really high value around culture and around, I would say, the human experience overall, both for our employees and for our customers. So just a little bit about Bamboo, who's local here. But like I said, it feels like I was just in your shoes as a student, but you'll out me on this next one. That if I can get to it, there we go. So my family here in Utah, and a couple of them are in college, and one has graduated, moved on. So we're definitely time flies. But I want to just a little bit about me. So this is a picture. This is my son Ethan. This was actually on Christmas Day. I don't know if anybody knows where this is, but it's called the Milford Track in New Zealand. And so on Christmas Day, we're walking through rain, through sometimes waist deep water, looking at eels swimming by, and then emerged into this valley of amazing waterfalls, just hundreds of them everywhere. And so if you're getting a flavor, I really love adventure. I love photography. I love to do fun stuff in travel with my family. But just a little bit about me. And I think that really your career is an adventure. And we could have a whole separate talk on that. And so if we have extra time today, you can ask me about when I had the chance to meet Bono, or when I rented an Indian snake charmer village, or when I was running around the Charles River in Prague to try and recruit someone in the data science arena. But it's places I didn't expect to go, places I didn't plan. And so, like I said, we'll save that talk for another time. But as you're embarking, many of you in your studies and you're embarking in new careers, I would encourage you to consider three things. And the first is just to keep your eyes open for opportunity and realize that it may not look the way you imagined. So just be, there may be things that look like the opposite of an opportunity that turn out to be an opportunity. So keep your eyes open to that. The second, and one of my professors took time off from, whether we were doing database design or neural networking. I did a computer science degree. And so anyway, he took time aside and just for a moment one day paused and said, hey, just spend less than you earn and you'll be really much more comfortable in life. That kind of financial piece will set you free and keep you flexible to do things. And it's kind of easier said than done, but just I would pass along that good advice that I got many years ago. And the last one is to look for how you can use your power to lift. I mean, anyone here doing the studies you're doing, interested in data science, furthering that, AI, what a tremendous field. You're going to have great opportunities and a lot of, earning power or influence and resources over time in your life. And, everyone can go different directions, but you will have power to help and figure out a theme in your career where you can do that. And thanks for the kind words on the intro and mention of the TEDx talk, TEDx Salt Lake City, which I gave there on campus at Kingsbury Hall. And that was a great opportunity that came along, one that I hadn't expected as well. But I talked about soulful technology, which is central to my why, which is how can we make technology behave more like a friend and use the powers of AI intelligently, right, to help lift in a more humanistic way. And so if you watch that, I'd love your feedback and questions on that. But we all know what AI looks like, right? Isn't it this white and light blue bits on a dark background, kind of coalescing in space, or maybe it's like white androids doing stuff. It's funny, if you do a Google search for AI and you go to Google Images, this is what you get, right? And it's like, oh, we decided what all this looks like. And of course, those are some silly cliches or visuals they're trying to put to something that's quite abstract, maybe. But I would like today to talk about, I'd like to push aside any kind of preconceived thoughts about AI and just provide a perspective about what artificial intelligence could be about. And so with that, John McCarthy was a computer science pioneer. Many of you are familiar with him, but anyway, he built a lot of foundational things. And it's hard to believe it was over 65 years ago that he came up with the phrase artificial intelligence, right? And in fact, the famous thing is they were going to get together, a few of the top people were going to get together that summer and just knock it out. And AI was going to happen. And they figured they could do that. And, long history, we hear about AI winter and different things and, maybe the trough of disillusionment and things. But you know what? Stuff keeps happening. And Dr. McCarthy is kind of a hero of mine, not just because he started the ball rolling on AI. He also built Lisp, which my favorite language happens to descend from. I use Clojure quite a bit, which is kind of a modern Lisp with very interesting data-centric structures. Of course, we use Python a lot in the data science realm as well, and we've used R, and so lots of good things. I'm not trying to make a too strong a statement about language, but love Clojure and the ideas there and what it enables me to do. And a lot of that came from this guy back in the 50s. But he also observed this, and I find this pretty funny, right? As soon as it works, no one calls it AI anymore. And in fact, so it's always this thing that's sort of dangling out there in our future, right? Like, oh yeah, when we get to AI. And back in the day, he built garbage collection. And those that are familiar with that in computer science, very fundamental algorithm to operating systems, and everybody's got it on their phone to clean up memory and make sure our phones keep running without crashing. And that was cutting edge. That was AI at the time, or could have been, but the goalposts move, right? So no one calls it AI anymore. So when we say this, what do we think about with AI? Sometimes we hear it and we think about magical future things, and so I'd like to deconstruct a little bit about what it might mean to us. And I'm going to just start at the very, very basic, and forgive this, but because I know you're all very advanced in this, but we build things with data and functions, right? And data, these form our logical building blocks where functions can reinterpret or combine data. And when these are coordinated in a process towards some sort of higher logical result, we tend to call it an algorithm. And when we then compose a bunch of algorithms, and maybe those are working together to provide something that we might describe as having more human-like qualities, right? Like it's smart, it's reasoning about things, or maybe it's interactive in a way that feels human, like it's got some chat capabilities. So we might call that AI. In fact, some people even say we built an AI, right? And they kind of give it this individual identity, almost like a personification. And so sometimes that's when we talk about AI. But if you peel it back, it's just, okay, we're composing data and functions, and the algorithms, which often have a mathematical component, right, that we can use math and logic then to interpret those and make them behave more human, and that's where we go. And of course, I'm not just talking about things like chatbots here, but there are many ways that something could be more human-like and have some level of autonomy within a system and different kinds of agents. So we see this composition of abstractions and increasing sophistication kind of left to right here. And there are several related pieces. So when we pull data from repositories, whether it's databases, data warehouses, lakes, which we fill with our data pipelines, but I would even say when you think about source code, code itself, so source code control is another repository, your Git repos. And in fact, some languages, including Clojure is in this camp, but blur the lines between data and code and have a property called homoiconicity, where those can both be represented in the same way, right? Data can be code, code can be data, and you can manipulate it. And that's powerful for higher order logic. But we also conduct analysis, business intelligence. We create these analytical views, whether standardized or ad hoc queries, visualizations. And then lastly, we can use things like machine learning and construct predictive models, right? And have a viewpoint about interpreting the world, and especially what could happen in the future. So that's one way of decomposing some of these pieces and parts that can contribute to AI. It's interesting, recently, I would say some people tend to think of AI as synonymous with deep learning, or, and as you know, way of using machine learning with these deeply layered neural networks and all kinds of different flavors of that, right? Different architectures we can use to feed results. And there's been tremendous progress in this area. What's interesting is kind of now that the hardware is caught up with a vision and some papers and algorithms that were designed starting in the 80s, if you really trace it back. And so it's interesting to see that evolution over time. But and as impressive as those advances are, beyond deep learning, as you probably know, but AI is just really rich and diverse. And these are just a few areas, one way of kind of parsing it up a little bit here. And this is without going down to the level of different types of algorithms, but different clusters of things here. And you think about what can we do with natural language processing and conversational interfaces, or how can symbolic logic and deduction and reasoning occur? Lots of press right now in people pursuing the self-driving cars, and so signal processing and robotics, and how we look at computer vision and all those exciting fields. And at BambooHR, or at any organization that you may go to, or in your own interests, there may be certain parts of this that you would really hone in on and make use of, right? Like in our world, we're not so much chasing like things like the robotics or signal processing, although I can imagine applications where we would want to interpret video streams and have some aspects that help augment the human connection there. But we are doing a lot with things like natural language processing with symbolic logic, and machine learning overall. So just different areas will apply in different places. I just want to keep in mind the breadth of the field. And as you know, like any given piece here is evolving rapidly. And just to keep track with it could be a full-time, is more than any person could ingest. So it's an exciting space and field. And you may have heard the expression that data is the new oil. And if so, this might follow. So Dr. Ng here, that many of you may be familiar with, I kind of think of him as everyone's kind of other machine learning professor with his courses at Stanford and Coursera, and kind of a general AI luminary, that worked at Google Brain and chief scientist at Baidu, things like that. But he gave a perspective. He's given in different forms many times over the years on this. But so AI is the new electricity. Do we really believe that? Is that, you think about what that could mean? Is this just self-serving propaganda from the power company, or what would be the implications if AI is really something as fundamentally different for society as electricity was? And you think of being born in a time pre-electricity and then living through decades of advancements once that was available, and how that, transformed the way we lived and worked at that time. Could this be a similar time of transformation? It's going to be interesting to see. So he asked an interesting question, Dr. Ng did, about looking back on the internet companies that emerged in the internet era, which has been a little while. But so if we have a store here, this is in Italy, one of my favorite places, Le Due Valli here, and these guys have a great looking store with some nice merchandise. If they, get out a can of paint here and put up a .com, and then they open their website, are they now running an internet company? And well, maybe, but that might not be sufficient, right? So Dr. Ng got into what makes a company really an internet company, and one of the things of the time was doing A/B testing and multivariate testing, but being able to vary up the pieces of the web experience. Another one that seemed like a common thread was short iteration times. And in fact, these companies tend to be very engineering centric and be able to distribute their decision making with engineers, product managers, et cetera, and be able to rapidly iterate and change the experience, because fetching the program over the web, so to speak, into your browser was something you could vary at a moment's notice, and you could vary from one user to the next. And so it created this space for experimentation that was different than before. And those kinds of things determined the successful internet companies. And so he was more recently saying, well, what if we're learning about what it could mean to be an AI company, what might that be? If we take and throw together a neural net or sprinkle some deep learning on our product, is that now an AI company? And of course, not so much. But one of the key elements there is that these companies tend to have very strategic pathways for data acquisition and multi-year ongoing ways of figuring out how to secure or generate data. And of course, we hear the dark side of some of this too right now, with a lot of the, the privacy concerns, and, are certain big tech companies making inappropriate use of things. And you've got now, Apple pitted against others in their stance of how they're wanting disclosures to happen, and all sorts of different things. And without trying to weigh in exactly on that, though, it's just the data is very key, right? And for example, at BambooHR, one of the things that is really a strategic asset for us is we are the HR system of record for tens of thousands of small to mid-sized businesses. So if you're employed at all these businesses, you're the records of who's working and when they're off, and what their position is and how to reach each other, like all that stuff is part of a core record. And so we have many companies that come to us with their various products in the HR technology space who want to interact with that data, want to offer something, and we have a marketplace. And so for us, that's our way of having, some strategic data. But different companies are producing data streams by having their own users and then mining that data, all kinds of different things around strategic data. A second area that AI companies really need is to have the ability to pull data together in a unified fashion and be able to use it. Now, there are limitations to this, and some of them are privacy and security related, and we need to acknowledge those. But the ability to pull together, rather than having, data I've seen this in a lot of different companies where a lot of data was out in different products or silos, different SaaS, products that were being used. And until you can bring those together in a way where you've modeled and stacked them and can overlay them and use them together and reason about things, you don't get the full power until then. And so having that is key. Pervasive automation is another one, meaning can we take the data and algorithms, can we weave the decision making and the cues that those can help us have, can we weave those into the systems and the environment in a way where they're constantly operating? And that doesn't mean replace the humans, right? But bionic arms, and you think about electricity and what it did to change what was possible for us to accomplish. And same thing with AI, right? If it just simplifies certain kinds of tasks and provides that's a key element for these companies. Lastly, it requires new roles and skills. And I don't just mean, we're here in a data science setting. And so, data scientists, data engineers, different dedicated roles around, being data practitioners. Absolutely. Those are newer and new to some companies. But I'm also talking about the level of data literacy across organizations and what they're able to do, whether in management or other roles. There's a role called data translator, which has elements of helping map what's possible with AI to the business. And so companies need all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of different things that go on in having a company be able to take advantage of AI. I'm going to kind of go a little faster through a couple of these models, but Dr. Ng talked about, hey, let's do pilot projects. Let's build an in-house team. Let's provide broader training and bring the literacy up among all ranks. Let's form a strategy and then communicate about that strategy. So that's one type of process. Here's another view where it's looking at more how your data is organized. We mentioned the centralized data, but evolving from these silos and starting to consolidate them and have some pilot projects. Then maybe you get to a data hub. Maybe that data hub adds capabilities, APIs, and other interfaces where now you can have an AI factory. And so competing in the age of AI speaks, about this. And these, there's numerous different sources that think about, all right, how do you bring that into a commercial setting? And other views here, like a Maslow's hierarchy here, but different things. You can see, something I would observe from this is, yes, data preparation is often the bulk of the work. There's so much work to just arrive at the point where we can actually do, our learning on top of it. And so many of those pieces actually are key parts of the process. And there's, challenging puzzles in each of those. Over here is a different maturity model that Gartner has, but just we can progress, I think, to a more integrated, forward-looking automation. When it talked about pervasive automation, being able to put these kinds of insights right into the systems that take our company forward. So those are a few different views. I want to, again, step back and strip back and maybe simplify to a way of thinking about it. And this is a way I often talk about, where these three layers. Now, each of these layers can always be improved. There's disciplines within each one that will always be advancing, and each one feeds forward to the next. And so any improvements we can make in each layer will help us do better at the next layer. So if you start at the bottom with our data and the data engineering activities around that, all kinds of work around data cleansing and normalization and how things are being transformed and flowing together. Even the modeling of how how does it make sense to stack things? It's different, from an operational database where we're tracking actions in an application versus when we want to go analyze what's happening, the shapes and the groupings are different, and we actually need to spend time modeling those. So data engineering, all kinds of work there. But we take data that's increasingly clean, and then we can feed that into our data science practice, and we can look for insights. And sometimes this is through things like interactive views and data visualization, business intelligence, where someone can go and try to find patterns. Other times it's predictive models, and we know an outcome that we're interested in predicting. And so we'll build machine learning models, we'll use supervised learning and come up with things, or we'll use unsupervised learning to just find other observations, right? So we can take those and gain insights and predictions. And then a layer that I think a lot of people miss in this is what I talk about here with decision AI. And to motivate this missing layer, I'll talk about an example from some prior work. So at some point in the past, our company, the company I was in, we worked on, we worked with a lot of big call centers around the world. And what we would do is we would look, and when a call was coming into that center, we would see, all right, who's available to potentially take this call? And rather than just have a policy of routing to the next available agent, we took an active role in that, and we said, okay, let's predict based on the history of this customer and whatever we might know or even predict about the issue they're calling about. Let's then take that and let's compare with the history of all of our agent pool interactions. And so if I look at the first agent who's available, and I want to make predictions like, what's the expected handling time if I route to that agent? Okay, maybe that's 3 minutes and 53 seconds. What is the chance of them resolving this customer service issue? And maybe that's an 83% chance. Maybe there's a 12% chance of an upsell with a particular expected value. So I create this set of predictions, or a bag of prospective outcomes, right, associated with choice A. And then I can go and do the same thing for choice B and C, and see what I might predict for those different agents. Maybe the second agent's going to speak a little longer, but more likely to take care of the issue, and maybe even more likely to get an upsell. Would I rather have this set or this set? Well, to answer that question is actually kind of tricky, and it seems simple, but to do that, you can introduce some things around what I might call a value equation. And if you think about economics, where you have a utility function and how much utility I would get from something, we can build those for companies and for their stakeholders. And so in these situations with the call center, we would say, all right, let's combine those through a value equation and say, which one of these routing decisions would create the most sustainable value for the activities of the contact center and our customers and the person calling in. And when I say sustainable, it's because you're trying to take into account each of those stakeholders, and how can we create better experiences and better, there's always the economics in it, but overall, like, how do we do that in a way that everyone's better off? And so you could get into game theory and other things here, but decision AI is an interesting layer to me, where we combine those things at the top. So, a question I like to think about too is, in any organization, how can we collectively behave more like a friend? And we mentioned a little bit the soulful technology concept. This goes right with that. And I'm going to actually, since we're speaking of call centers, I'm going to ask you to each imagine a time where you were talking with, some company at over the phone or chat or anything. But, sometimes the experience, I don't know about you, but I've had some decent ones, but I've had some that aren't so great. And, I've had times where you call in and they ask for certain types of information. Maybe you punch that in, you need some account numbers or whatever. You get to a person, you tell them your story of what's going on and what help you need. And at the end of all that, they may say, well, actually, this is the wrong department. Let me transfer you to the right one. Then you transfer, you repeat the story because they don't have the notes. And so I'd ask you for a minute to replace this company you're talking with, imagine you're walking along, speaking to your friend, and these events are happening, right? and you're telling them something, and you would be concerned about your friend. You know, there's a name for friends like this. You might worry that they're schizophrenic or amnesiac, right? Because they're forgetting things, they're acting in different ways. And I say that because organizationally it's very fragmented. When you're speaking with that company, you're thinking of having a dialogue with the company, and yet you have these people in the middle. And I feel bad for a lot of the agents who are just trapped inside a dysfunctional machine. But I think we can do better. I think we can listen carefully. We can remember what you say. We can act with consistency and respect your time. And that's an aspiration here. But to do that, let's think about the different kinds of agents or entities acting within an organization. So we have this first one, that's our artificial intelligence. And then we might have artificial intelligence. Oh wait, we can just call that humans, right? So we have human intelligence. And then we also may have a group, the collective here. And, you know, can we think about collective intelligence? Well, the problem with the collective, these independent agents with isolated views of the world. And like I said, our customers think of every interaction they have with coming from, you know, the company. And so we're all representing it. But how do we coordinate and bridge the gap between these independent agents? Well, some things that people try to do to get this more cohesive organizational behavior is have training, you know, procedures, you know, hey, when this happens, make sure you do this. It can be culture, like culture can give us maybe a common set of values that we use to reconcile our decisions. And, you know, maybe that gives us more autonomy to go take care of a customer in a particular way because that's part of our culture. Compensation, you know, the rewards for what we're doing definitely influence how things are going to happen. And you can look at performance management as well, and how we're rated in our workplace. But I think that data and systems and AI have a bigger role here that is not fully tapped, and that we can do more. In fact, so we can work towards organizational intelligence. And data is organizational memory. You think about how else can we know what happened across all these heads and in an organization. We have to be able to record that as data. And the way that we model the data, those are the neural pathways of the organization, right? The way we model it tells us what we can remember. And so if we have this organizational memory, then we can layer AI, and AI is really just all these memories and all this experience we have as an organization being now applied and put into action. And so I think we can do much better with that. So as humans, we have all these different tremendous capabilities, right? And some of these are in common with animals, and some that differentiate us from animals and machines. But we have all these different ways of interacting with the world. And just as we develop these capabilities from the time we're little humans, we can develop them for individual bits of AI, right? And for an organization as a whole. So through as data scientists, or as computer scientists, as, you know, software engineers and statisticians and others, product managers, we can use our best human capabilities and the systems that we build to teach machines and to teach organizations how to behave like better grown-ups and be better friends. And when we do that, we have to consider all the different ways they interact, right? How does our application sense? Like what is it interacting with? What can it remember? How does it reason? What opinions can it have about the future and therefore predict? How does it describe? You know, it has a cognitive, if we're building some model into it, how can it describe what's happening there? How does it interact or converse with people, or provide feedback in any sort of way? And what else can it do to act? So you think about all those different modalities as we think about how we could have a more humanistic type of AI. So I believe that we can continue to become, in our organizations and in the products we design, we can create and become something that feels more like a friend and is aided by all these bionic improvements that are available through data and AI. And this can be done in a way should be done in a way that aligns with our values, whatever value set we've developed individually or as an organization, and also with judicious choice in kind of where and how we might lean on technology to scale in a humanistic way and not, forget about that human side. So, these are a few maybe postcards from a destination. I don't know if you want to go to this destination, but it's a destination I really admire. And so, but let me acknowledge that this is really a journey. And like, these are some of the steps we're in the middle of. Like, there's a lot of work here in improving what we have to work with in our data foundation. And I see a couple of my colleagues have actually joined. So Jason and John, if you want to wave out, we've been working together on improving the data foundation at BambooHR and using that to further these ideas, but working on developing and sharing a strategy, working on taking stock and expanding the skills available to our team. We're doing a bunch of hiring right now, whether it's data engineers, data scientists, AI software engineers who can help build applications. But just working as an organization to collaborate and contribute. So we're in the early stages of this kind of a direction. But I want to kind of bring this back around and get back to you. Now that we've seen some of this potential future, and I'm really excited. Like I said earlier, your career is really an adventure, and the directions it can go are limitless, especially equipped with the rapidly evolving things going on in AI. But I'm excited for you in that. And one of the things we are doing this summer, we have an internship program that we're doing, and typically we'd have one of our talent acquisition partners maybe here with us. And Camille is actually on maternity leave right now, but we're working with others, and we can, and maybe John, if you could put something in the chat with Thomas, who's one of our partners, who will be working with the internship. If any of you are interested in more information on that, just we'll drop something in the chat about how to reach Thomas. But again, exciting times, and in fact, as you're embarking, just one last thought here on thinking about what you can do, learn, and become. Data science is a super exciting area, leads to a lot of different directions, and you can pair it up with a lot of different skills. But as you do that, I would recommend thinking about something, and I saw this great documentary on Netflix. It's called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Some of you may have seen it. And it's this gentleman here, he's in his 80s. He has a Michelin-rated sushi restaurant in a Japanese subway. He's like, regarded as the best sushi restaurant in the world. And he, for decades and decades, right, since he was very young, every day he has made sushi, and he believes he can improve it every single day. And you see, it's not like, here in Utah, we have some of this fun, I love it, but sushi fusion where you get all these crazy rolls and things. His stuff is very fundamental. It's very simple, and he believes it can be even better, and just keeps doing it. And it's been recognized. But I love this quote. So once you decide on your occupation, you must immerse yourself in your work. You have to fall in love with your work. Never complain about your job. You must dedicate your life to mastering your skill. That's the secret of success and is the key to being regarded honorably. And it was inspiring to see how he has taken this craft around sushi and continued to improve it throughout his life. Now, I want to say something to be careful here. I'm not saying that you should exclude other parts of your life and only do work, right? And in fact, one of the Bamboo core values we have, and I'll just hold up, here's some of our values, but one of them is enjoy quality of life, okay? And people hear that and they might say, oh, does that mean, oh, that's like work-life balance, right? Well, that could be an element of it. But quality of life isn't just, I think it would be sad actually if your work was this kind of annoying interruption to your life. And as soon as you can clock out, then, okay, good, life resumes, right? And work is such an important, it's a big part of our life. So can it be part of the quality of our life too, rather than just, like I said, something that's just kind of there, that's a necessity? And I know there's different, stages and seasons. I've seen other people who maybe have a passion around something and it's not realistic for them to start out making a living with that, but maybe they go get a job and maybe they're less passionate about that, but it provides the means for them to, pursue the other field, and that's fine. All of it should contribute in whatever way you design. You can design your life. There's a great Designing Your Life book by a couple of Stanford professors where they talk about design thinking and how it applies to choosing your life. But you can design it, but work is an integral part of our life. And why not find a way to have that be part of the quality of our life and experience the excitement of the learning, the collaboration with, great teammates. It can be, work should be part of the quality of our life, is my interpretation of that particular value. So I just invite you to consider that. And with that, I'd say thank you, and just want to open up for time for any questions or discussion, and whether myself or I might tee up one of my teammates here that joined as well to answer any questions you have as you're thinking about any of these concepts.
I got a question. One more about your company in general.
Sure.
So what, I know you guys do human resource software. What does your data collection process look like? Because when I think of human resources, I think of people who do payroll and things like that. What is your data collection like, and how do you manage that kind of stuff?
Sure. I can start that, and I may have others add, but basically, yeah, so you think about HR data, you're right. Payroll would be one example, right? And there's many different applications around what people would use inside of our application. They can choose different modules. So for example, time tracking and being able to, record and punch in or do remote clock in, things like that, or being able to set goals and do performance management, and work together as a team to say, all right, how are we going to lay out a sequence of, goals and processes that will lead us towards success. And so as they work with any of these different modules that are part of our product, they are working with a database, right? Where we're keeping track of various things. And so one kind of data is that we're stewards of data for them, and we're needing to keep reliable track of all that because it's critical data. But we're also, for example, we're doing things like instrumenting the fact that someone interacted with a particular feature or interaction in the software. And I was just looking at some interactive dashboards that we have, where looking at a couple 100 million interactions, from the past couple months, where people, everything they were doing with different areas of the product, and what kinds of interactions and what was the sequence of those interactions. There's kind of limitless branches of where we can go use that data, but that's one type, is how they're interacting with it. A whole other realm, or we talk about data domains. So we have a customer experience data domain, which is all of their activity with the product and support activity, like they might raise an issue or question. But even before they're customers, we have people who are interested in the products, and they come to us and have a prospect journey. And we track data through a customer acquisition domain, where you can look at sales and marketing activity, right? And oh, look, they were interested in a blog article we put out there, and then they made a request for information, and they responded to this particular follow-up email, right? And so you could see different timelines of data and how they're interacting on that journey and how that evolves through a funnel. So there's that rich different types of data in those spaces. Another example is data that comes in via the actual interactions on a support ticket and the transcripts of what's happening. And so Jason, do you want to just give a quick highlight of the ticket topics lab work and what we're doing with that kind of data?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we wanted to learn a little bit about is what are the issues or the kind of the things that customers are asking or having problems with the software at a given time. And one of the ways, and I know there's going to be multiple ways to do this. One of the ways that we thought was to kind of find what are the common words, like the topics of the context of the tickets. And it's actually something that we put together, grab a whole bunch of tickets from different areas and try to model it in a way that we can start understanding what is happening, what are the things that they're asking, what are the issues, see if anything surfaces, so that we are kind of like knowing what is happening, kind of use the power of a lot of information and data to learn what our customers needing and what are the issues that are happening at a given amount of time. And the way that we did that was with topic modeling, and it looks pretty good. There's like a lot of information that we can gather from that and learn what are the things that are problems that customers are having. We can also do kind of retrospective analysis and see what happened a month ago. Maybe at some point we can even start moving forward and start doing it more of a as things are coming up, so that we can start predicting what is going to happen in the future, in the near future perhaps, and just predict what the customers needs.